If you do very, very vigorous activity and you are sweating a lot throughout the day, then generally you would want to consume more salt, because as you perspire, you are going to be losing a lot of water and salt. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to another Sunday Q&A. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and today's question is with regard to salt consumption while on the carnivore diet. A few months back, I had released another video on salt consumption on the carnivore diet, and on that video, I got a follow-up question from Cameron Briffa, and Cameron asks, 10 grams of salt per gallon? That sounds high. I drink a gallon of water a day. From what I can gather, max should be 2 grams or 2,000 milligrams per day. Well, Cameron, that's a really good point that you bring up, and it's something that a lot of people tend to mix up. With regard to table salt, a lot of people will conflate table salt with sodium, and the truth is, table salt is going to be 98% sodium chloride, so it is not 100% sodium because there is chloride in there, and one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of table salt is because it's heavily processed, and aside from sodium chloride, there's really not a whole lot out there, because during the processing of the table salt, they remove a lot of the trace minerals that are found in there, which is why personally I'm a big fan of using Himalayan sea salt. Himalayan sea salt, it's also 98% sodium chloride, but it does contain all those really good trace minerals in there that were removed during the processing of the regular table salt. With regard to Himalayan sea salt, you're going to have calcium, potassium, magnesium, even some iron in there. With regard to the trace minerals, there's going to be roughly 4 times more calcium in Himalayan sea salt than in table salt. Potassium, there's going to be roughly 3 times more. And then with magnesium, there can be up to 76 times more magnesium in Himalayan sea salt than in table salt. So that's a few things worth noting with regard to table salt versus Himalayan sea salt, and why personally I prefer using either Himalayan or Celtic sea salt, just because of the facts that I just listed out for you. Another thing is with regard to the recommended daily allowances or recommended daily intake, the suggestion is 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. There are a few things worth noting with this. First of all is you don't want to go by the recommended daily intake, because depending on different people's shapes, their sizes, that is going to differ how much salt they should be consuming, specifically how much sodium they should be consuming. Somebody that is 7 feet tall, 500 pounds should not be consuming the same amount of sodium as somebody that is 4 foot, 90 pounds. So that's one thing worth noting. The other thing is with regard to the recommended daily allowances, a lot of them underestimate how much would be an effective dosing to take. I'm going to use vitamin D as an example. Not too long ago, the recommended daily allowance for vitamin D was 400 IU. And me, myself, I've always done daily maintenance doses of anywhere from 5,000 IU to 10,000 IU. So the amount of vitamin D that I take on a regular basis far exceeds the recommended daily intake that is provided by all these different organizations. I even did several videos on the subject of vitamin D, and I've broken down several studies. And there was one study that I just brought up a few days ago, and it had to do with postmenopausal African American women who were given 2,000 IU of vitamin D daily for an entire year, and it found that it barely made a dent in their serum 25-hydroxy vitamin D levels. And for them to actually raise their serum 25-hydroxy vitamin D, they had to go on a dose of a minimum of 5,000 IU. So again, the recommended daily allowance at the time was 400 IU, and these women were being given 5,000 IU, which is far above the recommended daily allowance. So when it comes to these recommended daily intakes, you want to take it with a grain of salt, no pun intended, but you want to see what works for you. A few things that you could go by is, number one, how exactly do you feel? If you find that you're getting a lot of cramps, or that you are just not going to the washroom a lot, or just in general you don't feel really good, let's say you're getting loose stool, diarrhea, that type of stuff, that would be a better metric of if you are consuming too much salt than going by the recommended daily allowance, because again, everybody is going to be affected differently, and different amounts of sodium are going to react differently to different people. You can't just go based off of the recommended daily allowance. Another thing with regard to salt is sodium is going to be very, very important at several functions within the human body. Just a few of salt's roles. Number one, it is going to help with fluid balance. If you are somebody that drinks a lot of water, then salt is going to help you to retain that water. And if you don't consume any water whatsoever and you don't have any salt with that, that water is just going to get pretty much flushed out right out of your system. So if you are the type of person who drinks a lot of water, you would want to incorporate a little bit more salt to help with your fluid balance. Another thing is salt will help with things like nerve conduction and also with muscle contraction. So if you are somebody that is really into strength training or just in general weight training, you would want to consume more salt, because when you exercise, you need that sodium to be able to get your muscles to contract. And if you are the type of person that exercises a lot, particularly if you do very, very vigorous exercise, you are going to be sweating a lot. And when you sweat, you lose water and salt. So you're going to want to replenish the salt by incorporating a little bit more salt into your diet. Now, in terms of salt, these are all pretty vague recommendations. How much should you consume? The truth is, it's going to depend on an individual to individual basis. There's no right or wrong answer for how much salt every single person should consume. One factor that's going to play into it is going to be your diet. Generally, the more meat that you consume, the more salt you should be consuming with that meat. And for myself, again, because I'm following the carnivore diet, it makes sense that I should be consuming more salt than somebody who is a vegan following a vegan diet, because they're not consuming as much meat, so they wouldn't need as much salt to help break down all of those different foods. The next thing would be water consumption. The more water that you consume, the more salt you are going to need, because again, salt helps with fluid balance. So if you are consuming too much water and not enough salt, that water is going to go straight through you. One thing worth noting with water consumption is the type of water is also going to dictate how much salt you end up consuming. If you are drinking something like spring water that already has salt in it or sodium in it, then you would not need to consume quite as much salt than somebody who is consuming, let's say, distilled water, because with distilled water, there's absolutely nothing left in the water. It's completely naked. There's no sodium, no chloride, no magnesium. Nothing is found in that water. For me, myself, I only consume distilled water, and distilled water, the reason I love it is because during the distillation process, it removes all of the harmful chemicals that are naturally found in the water. The problem is it also removes all of the good vitamins and minerals that are found in the water. So by adding in a little bit of Himalayan sea salt to your drinking water, it can help to remineralize all of the minerals that were lost during the distillation process. This is only true for distilled water. If you are drinking something like spring water that already has a very, very high mineral count, then you don't need to add salt to your water. If you want to, you can, but the general rule that I recommend to my clients is put enough salt in your water that you cannot taste it. If you can taste the salt in your drinking water, then you've added too much. Some other factors that are going to dictate how much salt you need to consume are, number one, geographical factors. If you live close to the equator, generally people are going to need more salt in those climates, because at the equator, it's going to be a lot hotter. You are going to be sweating a lot more. It's going to be a lot humid. So because you're sweating a lot more, you're going to be losing water and salt. So consuming more water and more salt if you live closer to the equator is going to be more beneficial. Whereas when you live closer to the poles, because it is very, very cold and you're not going to be sweating a lot, then you're not going to be losing as much water and salt, so you don't need to replenish your body with as much. Another factor that will dictate your salt requirement will be your environmental factors. So during the summertime, if you live somewhere where it is very hot and humid and you are sweating a lot in the summer, then you would want to consume more salt during those periods. If you live somewhere where it's very cold and you're not sweating a lot, it's not very humid outside, then you wouldn't need to consume as much. Likewise, if you are living in a cold climate during the warmer seasons when it is hotter and it is more humid and you are sweating more, then you would want to consume more salt during those periods of time. And likewise, if you are living in a very hot, humid area during periods of the year where it is cooler and it's not very hot and humid and you're not sweating a lot, then you wouldn't need to consume quite as much. Some other factors would be your physical activity. I stated this earlier, but if you do very, very vigorous activity and you are sweating a lot throughout the day, then generally you would want to consume more salt, because as you perspire, you are going to be losing a lot of water and salt. So you would want to find a way to replenish all of the salt stores that you are losing through the act of perspiration. Those are just a few of the reasons why you would want to consume salt, and different factors that would affect the amount of salt that you would want to take in. But pretty much the key takeaways of this video are, number one, you don't want to listen to the daily recommended allowances, because they are very, very general and they don't apply to every single specific person. So you want to go based off of how you feel. Again, if you're getting really bad stomach cramps or you're getting loose stool, diarrhea, anything like that, then try lowering your salt intake and see if all of those issues go away. I know that for a period of time when I was consuming too much salt, I was getting a lot of really bad cramps in my stomach and some diarrhea. And as soon as I lowered my salt intake to about 10 grams, I noticed that all of those issues went away. I know some people that they can go up to 30 grams and they have no issues whatsoever with regard to loose stool, cramping, any of that stuff. So it's going to come down on an individual to individual basis. Don't go by the daily recommended allowances, but use yourself as your guide. If you're feeling good on 10 grams of salt, then keep doing that. If you find that by consuming 10 grams of salt, you're getting really adverse reactions from that, then lower it. See how you feel on that. Try going higher. See how you feel on on that. Play around with different levels of salt intake, see how you feel. If you feel good, keep doing it. Don't listen to the daily recommended allowances. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.